The letter came in a thick brown envelope. No crest, no ribbon, no trace of dignity, just debt disguised as inheritance. I thought I was about to claim my grandfather's legacy. Instead, I was signing into hell. And the worst part? My name was already there, in ink that looked exactly like my own handwriting. I still remember that morning. The lawyer's office smelled like stale coffee and old carpet. My cousins, Trevor and Claire, were joking by the window, already arguing about who'd get the lake house, who'd take the Cadillac. I didn't join in. I just kept my hands in my lap, trying to quiet the strange unease in my chest. Grandpa had been a complicated man, stern, distant, secretive. But even with all his faults, he wouldn't leave us with nothing. Or so I believed. The attorney adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and read aloud. To my beloved grandchildren, I leave behind the fruits of my labor. What I owe is now yours to carry. At first, I thought I misheard. Trevor laughed nervously. Claire frowned, tilting her head like maybe she'd missed a word. But then the attorney opened a folder and slid papers across the desk. Credit statements, loan agreements, mortgages, dozens of them. Each one bore our names. Each one had our signatures at the bottom. My chest went cold. That's impossible, Claire whispered. I never signed any of this. The attorney didn't flinch. Every document has been verified. The handwriting matches. The accounts are tied to your social security numbers. Trevor shoved his chair back, so hard it screeched. This is a setup. Grandpa must have. He stopped mid-sentence, scanning the paper in front of him. His own signature stared back, perfect down to the sharp curve of the T. I lifted my sheet with shaking fingers. My name was written there in familiar loops and slants. The L bent the way mine always did when I was in a hurry. The R had that same careless hook I'd never been able to break since middle school. It was me, and yet it wasn't. The room spun. My grandfather had forged us into his debts. He had practiced our hands like a criminal artist, copying every flourish until it looked alive. Claire buried her face in her palms. Trevor cursed under his breath. And I couldn't move. I could only hear Grandpa's voice in my head, steady and calm, the way he always sounded when he wanted to make a point. A man pays what he owes, one way or another. Now we owed. Not just money, our reputations, our futures. By noon, the news was already spreading. The banker down on Main Street called me Miss Fraud under his breath when I tried to ask for advice. At the grocery store, whispers followed us down the aisles. Scammed their own grandfather, someone hissed. Shameful. I wanted to scream, to tell them the truth. But what truth? The documents looked real. The ink was ours. Even the police officer we met later that week stared at the pages, shook his head, and muttered, "If this is a forgery, it's the best I've ever seen." That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by boxes of unpaid bills that weren't mine, with numbers so high they made my throat tighten. My phone buzzed with Trevor's angry texts. You knew about this, didn't you? You were Grandpa's favorite. Then Claire's panicked call. They're going to take my house, Levi. I can't lose everything. But I was drowning, too. My job barely covered rent, and now I was expected to carry loans I never took. I opened one of the folders again, staring at the signature that mirrored mine too perfectly, and I swore I heard him laughing. Grandpa, from the grave. Not kindly, not fondly, but cruelly, like a man who had pulled off the final joke of his life. I thought inheritance meant freedom. Instead, it became a cage. And I knew then that if I didn't fight, I'd die paying debts that were never mine. The real battle wasn't with the banks. It was with his ghost. The first collection notice arrived 3 days later. Bright red letters screamed across the envelope. Final warning. Final? I hadn't even seen the first one. Trevor stormed into my apartment that night. His knuckles were white from gripping a folder. He threw it on my kitchen table. Dozens of envelopes spilled out. Credit cards, bank statements, overdue balances. Every one of them carried his name. He killed us, Levi, he hissed. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw tight. You know how much this adds up to? 200 grand. Minimum. And that's just me. Claire says hers is closer to 350. I stared at the mountain of debt. My stomach churned. Don't you get it? Trevor slammed his fist on the table. We're screwed. He didn't just ruin us. He buried us. I wanted to argue, to tell him we'd find a way out, but my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I picked it up. Mr. Riley? The voice was smooth, almost polite. This is Mr. Grant from Capital Trust. We're calling regarding your outstanding balance of $47,000. We'd like to arrange a repayment plan. I swallowed hard. That's not my account. A pause. Paper shuffling. Then, calm as ice, the signature says otherwise. And if you think claiming fraud will save you, you should know, we've already had handwriting experts review it. It's yours. The line clicked dead. Trevor paced the kitchen, running his hands through his hair. We go to the cops. We tell them Grandpa forged it all. They already said the signatures match, I reminded him. Then we find proof, Trevor shot back. Old documents, practice pages, something. Claire arrived 2 hours later, her face pale, eyes swollen from crying. She dropped a plastic bag on my counter. Inside were spiral notebooks, dozens of them. Grandpa's journals. I found these in his attic, she whispered. Look. We flipped through the pages. Grocery lists, weather notes, quotes copied from old books. At first it seemed harmless, until Trevor froze. Levi, look at this. On the last page of one notebook, rows of names repeated over and over. Claire's name, Trevor's, mine, written in different sizes, different slants, as if someone had been practicing. The letters curved and hooked exactly like our handwriting. My blood ran cold. He trained for this, Claire said, voice trembling. He studied us like it was an art form. Trevor cursed under his breath. Psychopath. But beneath the anger, something else stirred in me. Resolve. If he'd planned this for years, then maybe he'd left more behind. Mistakes. Paper trails. Weaknesses we could use. I flipped further back through the journals. On one page, written in his sharp block letters, was a phrase. Debts build character. Let them sweat. Let them break. It wasn't just revenge. It was his philosophy. Claire buried her face in her hands. We're done for. My boss already heard. He looked at me like I was dirt. Do you know what it feels like to be labeled a fraud? I did. Earlier that day, my landlord had called, demanding proof I could keep paying rent. When I hesitated, he muttered, I don't rent to liars. The world had already judged us guilty. Trevor grabbed a notebook and hurled it across the room. I'm not spending the rest of my life cleaning up his mess. I stared at the stack of papers, at the signatures that weren't ours but passed as real, at the phrases Grandpa had left behind like taunts. And something sharp lit inside me. He thought he was clever, I said slowly. But if he could forge us, maybe we can forge him. Claire lifted her head. What do you mean? He left behind journals. Letters. Old tax returns. His handwriting is everywhere. If he could fake us, we can fake him. Maybe even make it look like he confessed. Trevor's eyes widened. You're talking about framing a dead man. I leaned forward, my voice low, steady. No, I'm talking about telling the truth in the only language anyone will believe, his own handwriting. He left us no choice. The room fell silent. The only sound was the hum of my refrigerator, steady and cold. For the first time since the will reading, I saw something shift in my cousins' faces. Not fear, not despair, something harder. We weren't victims anymore. We were hunters. Grandpa thought he'd written the last chapter of our lives. But he forgot. Ink can be rewritten. And we were just getting started. The plan looked simple on paper. Too simple. Trevor always said desperate men mistake speed for strategy. He wasn't wrong. But desperation doesn't ask for permission. We gathered in my apartment that Saturday night. Claire had spread Grandpa's journals across my dining table, pages covered in his tight block letters and eerie imitations of our signatures. She tapped one particular entry. See this? She whispered. He wrote about debts, about discipline. If we splice in the right lines, it could read like a confession. Trevor leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. And then what? We hand it to the police, and suddenly they believe us? I stared at the page, at the loops and hooks that matched my own handwriting too well. Not the police. The bank. If they think Grandpa admitted to fraud, maybe they'll back off. Claire chewed her lip until it bled. It's risky. So is drowning in $500,000 of fake loans. I snapped. Silence hung heavy. The only light came from the lamp above us, casting long shadows across the papers. My heart pounded. It felt like Grandpa himself was watching from the dark corners, smirking. We worked for hours, slicing phrases from one page, tracing others, stitching them into something that looked like a letter. Claire's hands shook so badly she smudged the ink twice. Trevor cursed every few minutes, muttering about how insane this was. But by dawn we had it. I forged their names. I built my empire on false signatures. Let them suffer. It will make them strong. Signed in his unmistakable scrawl, Richard C. Riley. I stared at it until my eyes burned. The letters danced on the page, equal parts weapon and curse. Trevor exhaled slowly. Looks real enough. Claire whispered, it is real. Just rearranged. The next afternoon, we took the forged confession to Capital Trust Bank. My stomach twisted as we stepped through the glass doors. The marble lobby gleamed like a cathedral, every surface screaming money and power. People in suits moved like they owned the air. At the counter, I slid the envelope across to the manager. A tall man with gray hair and eyes sharp as knives. His nameplate read J. H. McCarthy. This might explain everything, I said, forcing calm into my voice. He opened it slowly, eyes scanning the page. His expression didn't change. Not once. Finally, he folded the letter neatly and set it on the desk. Interesting, he murmured. Very interesting. For a moment, hope flared in my chest. Maybe this would work. Maybe we'd walk out free. But then McCarthy leaned forward. His voice dropped low. You think we haven't seen forgeries before? You think 3 kids with no money and no lawyer can outweed a financial institution that's been swallowing families alive for 100 years? My throat went dry. We're telling the truth. His eyes narrowed. The truth doesn't come in cut-and-paste handwriting. The truth bleeds. And this, he tapped the paper. This is desperation. Amateur work. Almost insulting. Claire paled. Trevor swore under his breath. McCarthy's smile was thin and cruel. Here's my advice. Pay your debts quietly. Because if you keep pulling stunts like this, you won't just owe money. You'll owe people who don't forgive. He slid the letter back across the desk, careful not to touch it longer than necessary. Take it before I call security. We stumbled out of the bank, hearts racing. Outside, the sunlight felt harsh, too bright. Claire looked like she might vomit. Trevor punched the brick wall so hard his knuckles split. That bastard knew. Trevor growled, wiping blood on his jeans. He knew it was real. He just wanted to watch us squirm. Claire shook her head. No, he didn't care if it was real. To him, we're guilty no matter what. Grandpa made sure of that. We walked in silence back to my apartment. Every step felt heavier. My neighbors glanced our way as if they already knew we were branded thieves. When we got inside, Trevor collapsed on the couch, clutching his bleeding hand. We're screwed. The banks don't care. The cops don't care. Everyone already thinks we're frauds. Claire sat on the floor, hugging her knees. Tears streaked down her cheeks. I can't take this. I can't live like this. I paced the room, fury burning hot in my chest. Grandpa had built the perfect trap. Not just debt, perception, reputation. He'd stolen the one thing you can't buy back, credibility. But as I stared at the ruined letter on the table, a thought sparked. We went to the wrong people, I said slowly. Trevor looked up. What do you mean? The banks don't care. The police don't care. But maybe someone else does. Someone Grandpa crossed while he was alive. Someone who wants revenge as much as we do. Claire sniffled. Like who? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled one of the journals closer and flipped through the pages. Buried between the practice signatures and twisted quotes were names. Dozens of them. Men and women he'd lent money to, cheated in deals, ruined with interest they could never pay back. Victims. Just like us. I traced one name with my finger, Ellen Pierce. Next to it, Grandpa had written, took her farm, broke her pride. My pulse quickened. Maybe we're not alone, I whispered. The air in the room shifted. Claire lifted her head. Trevor's eyes narrowed. For the first time, the fight didn't feel impossible. Grandpa wanted us to drown in his debts. But maybe his old victims would be the rope we needed, whether they wanted to save us or drag him down with them. Ellen Pierce lived 2 towns over, in a sagging farmhouse that looked like it was leaning away from the world. Paint peeled from the shutters. Rust streaked the gutters. The kind of place that had once thrived and now barely breathed. Claire drove while Trevor and I argued quietly in the back seat. "She's not going to help us," Trevor muttered. "Why would she? Grandpa ruined her." "Exactly," I shot back. "That's why she'll listen." Claire kept her eyes on the road, knuckles white around the wheel. "Let's just hear her out before we fight." The sun was dipping low when we pulled into the gravel driveway. A black dog barked once from the porch, then slunk back inside. Ellen appeared at the doorway. She was older than I expected, maybe late 50s, but her eyes were sharp, the kind that cataloged everything in a single glance. "You're Richard Riley's blood," she said before we even spoke. Not a question, a sentence. "Yes," I admitted, throat tight. She opened the door wider. "Then you'd better come in." The house smelled of dust and wood smoke. Family photos lined the mantel, but most of the frames were empty, glass cracked. Ellen gestured to the couch. We sat stiffly, like children in trouble. "You know what he did to me?" she asked, voice steady. Claire shook her head. "He lent me money after my husband died. Promised he'd keep the farm safe. Next thing I knew, the debt doubled overnight. By the time I figured out his tricks, he owned the land under my feet. Took it, then rented it back to me like I was a guest in my own home." Her jaw tightened. "That man wasn't a grandfather. He was a vulture." I leaned forward. "He did the same to us. Left us with forged debts. Everyone thinks we're liars." For the first time, her eyes softened. Just a little. "Show me." I pulled out one of the journals, laid it on her kitchen table. Ellen flipped through the pages, her fingers trembling, not from weakness but from rage. When she reached the rows of our names written over and over, she let out a bitter laugh. "He practiced you like handwriting was a weapon," she said. "Fits him." Trevor leaned in. "We need help. We need someone who knows what he did, who can back us up. Someone the banks can't ignore." Ellen closed the journal slowly. Her expression shifted. "And why would I stick my neck out for you? You carry his name." "Because we're victims too," I pressed. "He trapped us like he trapped you." She studied me in silence for a long time. The dog barked again outside, as if sensing the weight in the room. Finally, Ellen spoke. "Maybe there's a way. I kept things. Records. Contracts he signed. If we stitch them together with what you have, it might paint a picture big enough that even the cops can't ignore it." Claire's eyes widened. "You'll help us?" Ellen nodded. "But not for free. You want my files? You'll do something for me first." The air went cold. "What?" I asked. "There's a storage unit in his name over in Carson County," she said. "Unit 317. He kept files there, ledgers, receipts, the real dirt. I know because I saw him haul boxes in myself. You give me what's inside, and I'll back you. Otherwise, don't bother coming back." Trevor frowned. "If you knew about this unit, why didn't you take it yourself?" Her lips twitched in something between a smirk and a snarl. "Because my face is known. His men would spot me a mile away. You three? You're nobodies. Perfect for slipping in and out." Her men. The words lodged in my gut. We left with more questions than answers. Back in the car, Trevor exploded. "This is insane. She's sending us into some setup." Claire chewed her nails. "What if she's right, though? What if the proof we need is in that unit?" I sat in silence, staring at the road. Ellen's sharp eyes haunted me. She hated Grandpa, that much was clear. But the way she said his men, that was something else. Almost like he still had reach, even from the grave. 2 nights later, we drove to Carson County. The storage facility squatted behind a chain-link fence, rows of metal doors stretching into darkness. We found Unit 317 easily. Trevor picked the lock with a tension wrench he'd bought online. The door screeched upward. The smell hit first. Dust, mildew, paper rotting in the dark. Piles of boxes lined the floor, some labeled, some not. Claire grabbed the nearest lid, pulled it open. Inside were files. Dozens of them. Loan contracts, property deeds, receipts with names scribbled in the margins. "This is it," she whispered. "It's all here." I pulled another box forward. At the bottom was a leather-bound ledger. My hands shook as I opened it. Names filled the pages, each one followed by numbers, debts, balances. Some were crossed out with notes like collected or foreclosed. And at the very bottom of one page, Pierce, broken. My stomach turned. Grab everything, I said. We'll take it to Ellen tomorrow. But when we stepped outside, hauling the first 2 boxes, headlights blazed in our faces. A truck blocked the exit. Doors slammed. 2 men climbed out, broad shoulders, heavy boots, faces hidden under ball caps. Trevor swore. Claire froze. One of the men called out, "You kids lost." The other cracked his knuckles. And in that moment, I realized Ellen hadn't given us a chance. She'd given us bait. The first man's shadow stretched across the gravel like a noose. He carried a flashlight, but it wasn't for light. It was a weapon. The other gripped a crowbar. My throat tightened. Trevor stepped forward, fists clenched, blood still crusted on his knuckles from punching that brick wall days ago. "We don't want trouble." The man with the crowbar smirked. "Then you shouldn't be sniffing around what ain't yours." Claire's breath hitched beside me. I grabbed her arm. "Back inside. Now." We ducked into the storage unit, slamming the door halfway down. Trevor shoved a box against it. The metal groaned as the men pushed from outside. "They knew we'd be here," Claire whispered, voice trembling. "Of course they did. Ellen hadn't sent us on a mission. She'd sent us into a trap." The door rattled harder. A crowbar clanged against the lock. "Think," Trevor hissed. He grabbed the ledger I'd been holding and shoved it into his backpack. "If we lose everything else, at least we've got this." The lock snapped. The door screeched upward. Flashlight beams sliced through the dark. I didn't think. I hurled a box straight at the intruders. Paper flew everywhere. Contracts, deeds, fragments of ruined lives fluttering like sick confetti. Claire screamed. Trevor swung a metal file cabinet drawer like a bat. It connected with one man's shoulder. He staggered, cursed. The other lunged. I felt the crowbar whistle past my face. Instinct took over. I grabbed the ledger box, smashed it against his arm. Pain shot up my wrist, but he dropped the bar. "Run!" I shouted. We bolted through the narrow rows of units, our footsteps pounding like gunfire. The men chased, their shouts echoing in the night. Claire tripped, scraped her knees, but Trevor yanked her up without slowing. The chain-link fence loomed ahead. Trevor didn't hesitate. He scaled it like a man possessed. I pushed Claire up, boosting her until she scrambled over the top. My hands burned as I climbed, metal biting into my palms. Behind us, one man roared, "You're dead. All of you." We hit the ground on the other side and ran until our lungs tore. By the time we reached the car, Claire was sobbing, Trevor's shirt was ripped, and my backpack, where the ledger should have been, felt lighter. I yanked it open. Empty. Somewhere in the chaos, the book had slipped. Trevor slammed his fists on the hood. Everything gone. Claire curled into the back seat, shaking. "They'll come after us. They know who we are now." I leaned against the car, chest heaving, mind racing. Ellen had played us. She hadn't wanted the files. She wanted us marked. The drive back was a blur of headlights and silence. When we finally reached my apartment, Claire collapsed on the couch, knees still bleeding. Trevor paced like a caged animal. "We confront her," he growled. "Right now." "No," I said. My voice was steady, sharper than I expected. "We don't go to her. She'll expect that. We wait. She'll come to us." I was right. The next morning, a knock rattled my door. Ellen stood there, calm as a Sunday sermon. No apology. No shame. "Rough night?" she asked, eyes flicking to the bruises on Trevor's jaw, the bandage on my wrist. Trevor lunged, but I blocked him. "You set us up." Her smile was thin. "I warned you he had men. You thought you were the only ones he hurt. Richard Riley kept more than ledgers in those boxes. He kept loyalty, debts owed to him that didn't vanish when he died. Those men, they're not mine. They're his. Still." Claire's voice cracked. "Why send us there, then? Why lie?" Ellen stepped closer, her shadow crossing the threshold. "Because I needed to know if you had spine. If you'd run at the first sign of blood, or if you'd keep fighting. Looks like you might actually have teeth." Trevor spat on the floor. "You're insane." Ellen ignored him. She slid a folded piece of paper onto the table. "You lost the ledger. Fine. But I still have my records. Every fake contract, every foreclosure he shoved down my throat. Together, we could bury his legacy for good. But you need to decide, are you in, or do I hand these to the same men who chased you last night? I stared at the paper. My pulse pounded. She had us cornered again. You don't want justice, I said slowly. You want revenge. Her eyes glittered. Is there a difference? Behind me, Claire whimpered. Trevor muttered curses under his breath. I picked up the paper. Names filled the page. More victims. More debts. And for the first time, I saw the truth. Grandpa hadn't just left us his own sins. He'd left us a battlefield. Allies who might turn. Enemies who might never stop. Ellen's voice was quiet, but it cut deep. You can't pay these debts. You can't erase those signatures. But you can flip the game. Join me, and I'll show you how. Her smile widened just enough to chill me. Or walk away, she added, and watch your lives burn, one foreclosure at a time. We should have walked away. Every instinct in me said Ellen Pierce was poison, but desperation drowns instinct. And we were already underwater. Trevor slammed his fist on the table. Fine, we'll play. But if you double-cross us again. Ellen chuckled, low and sharp. Kid, if I wanted you gone, you'd be fertilizer by now. Sit down and listen. We sat. Claire's knees bounced under the table. Trevor's jaw flexed like he was chewing glass. I kept my eyes on Ellen. She unfolded another sheet of paper. This one wasn't just names, it was a map. Circles drawn around banks, storage depots, office buildings. Grandpa's empire laid out in pen and fury. These are the places that held his power, she said. Money in, money out. Some still running under his shell companies. You want proof he ruined lives? Start here. Claire leaned forward. But the banks already hate us. They won't believe anything we show them. Ellen's eyes gleamed. That's the point. We're not convincing banks. We're breaking them. Trevor laughed bitterly. So your plan is arson? Sabotage? What? Blow the place up. Not fire, Ellen corrected. Exposure. Riley was careful, but not perfect. He buried evidence in his own vaults. Loan contracts, forged deeds, bribes. If we can dig those out, we make them public. And suddenly, you're not the frauds. He is. My stomach twisted. You're asking us to rob a bank. She tilted her head. I'm asking you to reclaim what was stolen. Call it whatever helps you sleep. Silence stretched. I felt Claire's eyes on me, begging for a decision. Trevor's glare burning holes in Ellen. And in the middle, me, the reluctant voice that always got stuck breaking ties. Which vault? I asked. Ellen smiled. That's the spirit. 2 nights later, we found ourselves parked outside a crumbling office building in Eastborough. Midnight. Rain slicked the street in ribbons of silver. The sign over the door read RCR Holdings, LLC. Grandpa's initials. His ghost grinning down at us. This used to be his headquarters, Ellen whispered, pulling gloves tight over her hands. Now it's a dead company, but the records are still here. I've got a contact who swears the files were never shredded. Trevor muttered. Or maybe it's another trap. Ellen ignored him. She pried open a side door with practiced ease. No alarm. Too easy. We crept inside. The hall smelled of mold and old cigarettes. Wallpaper curled at the edges. Dust coated the carpet like frost. Every door we passed had brass plates, accounts, loans, collections. I imagined Grandpa's shadow still sitting behind each one, pin scratching lies onto paper. We reached the basement. Ellen's flashlight cut across rows of filing cabinets. Hundreds of them, stretching like soldiers in the dark. Here, she said, pointing. Check drawers labeled 07 to 12. That's when he bled me dry. That's when he forged your names. We split up. My fingers trembled as I yanked open drawers, rifling through folders. Claire's voice broke the silence. Levi, look. She held up a folder. Inside was a loan contract. Her name scrawled across the bottom, signature perfect. But stapled to the back was another sheet. Notes in Grandpa's hand, trial run. Handwriting study successful. Claire's eyes filled with tears. This proves it. He admitted it. Before I could answer, Trevor called out from across the room. I found more. Dozens. He dumped a stack of papers on the floor. Each bore one of our names. Each had the same mocking note in the margins. Perfect copy. Indistinguishable. They'll never escape. My stomach turned. Proof. Real proof. Ellen's smile was fierce. Now we bury him. We carried the files back to the car, boxes stacked in the trunk. For the first time, the weight on my chest loosened. If we released these, maybe the world would finally see. Maybe we wouldn't be pariahs anymore. But Ellen wasn't done. As we drove back through the rain, she spoke softly, like a lullaby. You three want redemption. I want ruin. Riley took my farm, my name, my life. I'll take everything he built. That means more than waving papers at cops. It means destroying every last piece of his empire. Banks, allies, family. Especially family. Her gaze flicked to me in the rearview mirror. My skin crawled. You're not talking about exposing him, I said slowly. You're talking about war. Ellen's lips curled. Same thing, different temperature. Trevor barked a laugh. You're nuts. Am I? She asked. Or am I the only one willing to finish what he started? No one spoke the rest of the ride. But when we pulled up outside my apartment, Ellen leaned close to me before she left. Careful, Levi, she whispered. Your grandfather taught me one thing. Blood is just another debt. And debts always get collected. The next morning, Trevor burst into my apartment with a newspaper. His face was pale. They know, he said. He threw it on the table. The front page headline screamed. Local bank records stolen. Grandchildren of Richard Riley suspected. My knees buckled. Claire gasped. In the corner of the article was a blurry photo from a security camera. Me, carrying a box. Trevor behind me. Claire's face caught in the beam of a flashlight. Ellen's nowhere. Just us. Trevor slammed the paper down. She set us up again. We're the thieves now. And she's holding all the cards. My chest tightened. Grandpa's trap hadn't ended with his death. It was alive, evolving, twisting into something worse. We thought Ellen was an ally. She was just another predator circling the carcass. And now the whole town thought we'd robbed a bank. We became ghosts overnight. Neighbors who once waved now crossed the street. At the diner, forks clinked quiet when we walked in. Someone hissed, thieves, under their breath. The news replayed our blurry faces every hour. Grandchildren of notorious loan shark caught in theft scandal. No mention of Ellen. Not once. Trevor was furious. He tore the paper to shreds, paced my apartment until the floor creaked. Claire barely left the couch, hugging a blanket like it could shield her from whispers. And me? I just stared at the wall, listening to the silence between us grow louder by the hour. This is her doing, Trevor spat. She fed us to the wolves. Twice. Claire's voice was flat, drained. What if she's right, though? What if the only way out is to burn everything down? Grandpa's name, the banks, all of it. No, I said, my throat raw. She doesn't want justice. She wants blood. If we follow her, we're no better than him. Trevor stopped pacing. Then what? Sit here and wait for the cops to knock? Wait for the banks to seize everything we own? I didn't answer, because part of me wondered if maybe that was exactly how this ended. Quiet, broken, erased. Until the letter came. No envelope. Just a folded sheet slid under my door. My name scrawled across the front in ink too neat to be accidental. Meet me tonight. The old pier, midnight. Come alone. Ellen's handwriting. I felt the blood drain from my face. She wants to finish this. Trevor grabbed the note, crumpled it in his fist. Then let's finish it first. The pier groaned under our footsteps that night, wood warped from years of salt and storms. The water slapped against the pylons, black and endless. A single lamp buzzed weak light over the end of the dock. Ellen stood there, coat pulled tight, hair whipping in the wind. You came, she said softly. Not surprised. Not even smug. Just certain. You framed us, I shot back. My voice echoed over the water. You dragged us into your war. Her smile was bitter. No, your grandfather did that. I just showed you the truth. You're carrying his sins whether you like it or not. Trevor stepped forward, fists tight. You want us destroyed. Admit it. I want him destroyed, Ellen corrected, voice sharp. And he lives through you. His blood, his name, his fortune of lies. You're his legacy. Until that's gone, he wins. Claire's voice cracked. So you'll ruin us to ruin him? Ellen's eyes flickered. For the first time, a tremor of something, regret? Doubt. crossed her face, but it passed quickly. I already did, she said. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the waves. Trevor lunged, but I caught his arm. No, I hissed. Ellen watched us, calm as the sea. You have one choice left. Help me leak the rest of the files. Not to banks. To the press. To the public. Once the world sees what Riley really was, your names won't matter. You'll just be footnotes in his downfall. And if we don't? I asked. She smiled cold. Then you'll drown in his debts while I keep tearing his empire apart without you. Either way, Richard Riley loses. Question is, do you want to go down with him? The lamp above us flickered. Claire clutched my sleeve, whispering, Levi, I can't do this anymore. I can't live hated. I can't live broke. Trevor's jaw clenched. She's using us, Levi? Again. Ellen stepped closer, her voice low, persuasive. Your grandfather wrote your names in blood. I'm offering you fire to burn it out. Take it. The pier groaned under us. The sea smelled sharp, metallic, like storm on the horizon. My chest tightened. All this time, I thought Grandpa's revenge ended with forged signatures and empty bank accounts. But standing there, staring at Ellen, I realized the truth. The real inheritance wasn't debt. It was enemies. People like Ellen, who carried their wounds like weapons. And unless we ended it here, it would never stop. Trevor muttered. So what's it gonna be? I looked at Claire's pale face, Trevor's fury, Ellen's hungry eyes. And I knew, one last move could turn everything. We don't join you, I said, steady now. We end you. Ellen's smile finally cracked. Just a hair. Enough to show she hadn't expected that. The storm rolled closer, wind lashing the pier. The final reckoning was here. The storm broke as if on cue. Lightning slashed the sky, thunder cracking like a verdict. Ellen didn't flinch. She just looked at me with those sharp eyes that had cut us open since the day we met. You and me, she echoed, almost amused. You don't have the spine. Trevor stepped forward. Try us. She laughed, but it was brittle. Even if you kill me, the files are already in motion. The story's written. You're the villains. Riley's blood, carrying his curse. But she was wrong. I pulled my phone from my pocket. The screen glowed faint blue in the stormlight. One red dot pulsed at the top. Recording in progress. Ellen's smile faltered. You set us up at the storage unit, I said, voice steady. You admitted you framed us to bury his legacy through us. And now you just told us on tape that you'd already ruined us. Trevor grinned for the first time in weeks. Congratulations, Ellen. You just wrote your own confession. Her face hardened. No one will believe you. You're already thieves. Maybe, I said. But thieves don't carry the receipts. I held up the folder we'd salvaged from the office. The one Claire had clutched through the chase, too terrified to let go. The one with Grandpa's notes, trial run, handwriting study successful. The one Ellen thought had burned with the rest. Claire's voice was shaky but fierce. It's enough to prove he forged us. And now, thanks to you, we can prove you framed us too. Ellen's mask cracked. For the first time, she looked uncertain. The storm wind whipped her coat, her hair plastered to her face. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. Trevor stepped closer, voice low. You wanted us broken. You wanted us to bleed for him. But we're done playing corpses in your war. The waves roared. Ellen's eyes darted to the folder, to the phone, back to me. Then she turned and ran. Her footsteps thudded across the pier, fading into the storm until only the sea answered. We didn't chase her. We didn't need to. The fallout came fast. The next morning, we walked into the county police station with the folder, the journal entries, and the recording. The detective who had once called us liars listened in silence as Ellen's voice spilled from my phone. You're carrying his sins whether you like it or not. I already did. His eyes flicked up. Something shifted. By evening, the news had changed tune. New evidence suggests Richard Riley forged family debts. Local woman accused of framing heirs. Our faces still made the front page, but this time the caption read, Victims of a legacy of fraud. It wasn't redemption. Not fully. Some people still muttered when they saw us. Some would never stop. But the tide had turned. The debts were frozen pending investigation. The banks backed off, for now. Trevor called it survival. Claire called it mercy. I just called it breathing again. A week later, we stood at the edge of Grandpa's grave. The stone was plain, no flowers, just his name etched deep. Rain still clung to the grass. Trevor spat on the dirt. Claire whispered something I couldn't hear. I just stared at the letters carved in stone. You thought you'd bury us in your debts, I said quietly. But you forgot. We know how to dig. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of wet earth, sharp and raw. For the first time since that cursed wool reading, my chest felt lighter. We turned and walked away, leaving his name to weather and rot. At night, I still hear his voice sometimes. Calm, steady, cruel. A man pays what he owes. Maybe he was right. Because in the end, we paid. Just not the way he planned. Debts don't die with the dead, they just change hands.